Donald Trump launched severe attacks on Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, this time suggesting she could be removed from the United States. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump repeated the long-circulating allegation that Omar entered the U.S. by marrying her own brother, calling it fraud.
Frankly, don't need their people coming into our country telling us what to do.
When you talk about
I'm talking about like Somalia, where you have a congressman goes around telling everybody about our Constitution, and yet she supposedly came into our country by marrying her brother. Well, if that's true, she shouldn't be a congressman, and we should throw her the hell out of our country.
This comes as Trump moves to crack down on the Somali community in Minnesota, a state controlled by Democrats and home to one of the largest Somali populations in America. Trump recently announced an end to temporary protected status for Somali immigrants.
Hi, sir.
Sure. Hi.
What do the Somalians have to do with this Afghan guy who shot the national?
Nothing, but Somalians have caused a lot of trouble. They're ripping us off for a lot of money. There's a tremendous amount of money going back to Somalia. What the hell are we paying money to Somalia for? But they're ripping off our country at a level that few people have been able to see before. That's about the only thing. You talk about competence. We have Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country and our Constitution. And she comes from a country with practically no country. It's devastated, it's crime-ridden, it's a mess, it's a disgrace. And we took their people at a tremendous... We're not taking their people anymore. We're not taking their people. And we're getting a lot of their people out because they're nothing but trouble. Okay.
Omar arrived in the U.S. in 1995 and became a naturalized citizen. However, critics claim she entered under a false family identity, using the surname Omar, even though it allegedly did not belong to her biological family. Ilhan Omar has repeatedly dismissed all of these allegations as lies and political attacks.
It is really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made.
Legally, a naturalized U.S. citizen cannot be deported unless the government proves in court that the person deliberately lied or hid information that was essential to gaining citizenship. This is a very high bar, and such cases are rare.
Pakistanis are being targeted for harassment, repression, arbitrary detention, and forced disappearance for numerous reasons. Some are being targeted for their political affiliation. Imran Khan is an emblematic example, but by no means not the only example. Some are being targeted for their work as journalists and human rights defenders. Some are being targeted for defending their land and culture as the Balochistan. Still others are being targeted because they are a religious minority. What it amounts to is thousands of Pakistanis having been subjected to a wide range of human rights violations. It is a deeply alarming and outrageous pattern. The United States has a clear role to play here. Pakistan is one of our most important allies. This gives us a moral obligation to stand up for the people that are being targeted. It also gives us an enormous leverage. Mr. Linden, I want to begin my question by talking about another group of people that the Pakistani government is targeting, the Afghan refugees, who I had the honor of visiting when I went to Pakistan a few years back. Hundreds of Afghanis are living in Pakistan, some of whom have lived there for decades and are now being subjected to forced deportation. Can you touch on what are the international law implications of deporting people to a place they are likely to face torture or imprisonment?
Thank you, Congresswoman Omar. You're absolutely right. First off, there have been generations of Afghans living in Pakistan. They form part of the fabric of society, and yet they have been denied their rights. They have been demonized and constantly threatened with deportation. Amnesty recently actually put out a report focusing on the individual stories of some of the Afghan refugees who are impacted. One of those was a 27-year-old who we called Parwana Rahimi, although that's not her real name. She focused on socioeconomic challenges faced by Afghan women in Afghanistan. She started receiving death threats as the Taliban increasingly restricted women's journalists and women in general, and she left Pakistan as a matter of survival. But since then, she has had to deal with threats of deportation and harassment from the authorities, despite holding a visa and legal documentation. She has said herself, "I request the Pakistani government to see us as human beings, not just as refugees, and to extend their support to Afghan refugees facing genuine difficulties." She's also urged agencies such as UNHCR to expedite their processing to relocate refugees to safer countries as the uncertainty and challenges in Pakistan continue to mount. Pakistan put into place in 2023 an illegal, what's called, quote unquote, illegal foreigners repatriation plan, which initiated what may be one of the largest forcible returns of refugees in modern history. Over 1 million have already been deported in violation of the principle of non-refoulement, and that goes, I think, to your question about the international law basis. That is a principle that the United States and Pakistan both have the obligation to uphold. It is central to our obligations under the ICCPR. And again, this is a particular concern for Afghan women and activists. I think it's just critically important for both ends of this equation to be upheld. The U.S. has to continue to allow in those Afghan refugees in Pakistan who have been waiting in line and have been vetted and are undergoing vetting for U.S. visas. They also have to call on the Pakistani government to basically get rid of this quote-unquote illegal foreigners plan and extend the validity of the proof of registration cards held by 1.4 million Afghans in Pakistan currently. And for anybody watching at home or in the room, you can join Amnesty International's calls by writing directly to the Pakistani government, asking them to uphold the rights of these refugees and immediately stop all deportations and renew the validity of these proof of registration cards, which expired on June 30th. So all those 1.4 million Afghan cardholders are in a very precarious situation.
I do hope that those calls are answered. There could be some hope in having international pressure that reverses the course. I mean, the President Trump, Secretary of State Rubio have just fired everybody that's working in the care office at the State Department. Last year, under the Biden administration, I was able to meet with the Pakistani ambassador, advocating for them to stop the deportations. It is hard for us to have any sort of credibility right now in engaging in that kind of advocacy when we ourselves are deporting Afghans back to Afghanistan. And we certainly have, as you'd alluded to, hundreds of people that are waiting in different military bases that have been identified. Sending them back to a death sentence.